Good afternoon, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is Beauty with Love for those who are new here. And in my channel, I often do things called Flashback Fridays, different eras from past. I have done the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, and now we're on to the 1950s. This is my 1950s look. If you'd like to see how I created this look, go ahead and stick around because in 3 seconds, I will have no makeup on at all. 3, 2, 1. All right, as I said, we would be returning and barefaced completely. Today we are tackling the 1950s era, decade, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to fight with my hairband for a minute. The 1950s was a really interesting era. Again, I have found a lot of interesting things over the past, what is this, my fourth? 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, now we're on to the 1950s. So it's my fourth video like this. And I've learned a lot and found a lot of things interesting. Today is no different. When I was doing research on this, I decided that I wanted to add, of course, some history to this. So this is kind of what my 1950s makeup or my makeup Flashback Fridays has become. Kind of history and makeup. And so yeah, in the 1950s the makeup was changing, but it wasn't significantly different in a massive way. They were moving into what the mask effect was, a full face of thick foundation, whether it was liquid, cake, cream, a combination of all of the above. And so that's where that mask effect came from. And so we're back to like not messing with our lower lash. And again, like I have in all my other videos, I'm using products that I have yet to actually use, but I've had in my stash. So essentially I'm shopping my stash to do these. And I am using the Catrice HD liquid coverage foundation. Mattifying, second skin, lasts up to 24 hours. And this is in this color sand beige. I also have fair beige, but I tried these out the other day and I thought, hey, yeah, this would probably be really good to do this color. And I'm going to go ahead and apply it with a brush. This is my KVD Beauty number 10, the edged one. You guys know I love this. This is the type of makeup they were moving into. I have it all spread out in front of me and we're just going to go ahead and jump in. I went ahead and moved the camera closer, zoomed in a little bit more so you guys can really get a closer view of what I'm doing. And so we're just going to go ahead and jump into both history and then the makeup and the fashion, all that kind of put in together. There was something that I did forget to mention in last week's. In 1947, the first poodle skirt was basically made. And it was because a young lady just didn't have a Christmas skirt and she didn't really know how to sew all that well. So she decided just to take this little felt skirt, and it was, I believe it was like just had like a circle cut out of like this big material and then like a couple fasteners made, and then she just slipped it right on. It looked super cute. And then thus the poodle skirt was not named the poodle skirt right then until later on. And now in the 1950s, it became popular as the poodle skirt that we know with the little poodle on it, because women could be seen walking their little fancy dogs. And so they had a little poodle on their skirt. So, hey, poodle skirt. So that's just a little tidbit of that. On the more serious front, you know, we were still having wars. Unfortunately, it is something that is consistent in history. In June 25th of 1950, the Korean War was going on when around 75,000 soldiers from North Korea came across the 38th parallel. It was the boundary between Soviet-backed and Western Republic of Korea South. Remember, in the end of 1949, or the end of the 1940s, America had gone over and we had taken up some military areas to help out Korea, but we had parked our butts in the south. And then the Soviet Union had parked their tushies in the north. So when they came across And they were like, hey, time to invade. Well, that's how the Korean War started. With our troops over there, we were like, no, this is not going on. We gotta do something, step into this. Also, there was a senator named Joseph McCarthy, and he started thinking like, hey, we have some communists in the U.S. government, like CIA. They were spies. They're like, this is not good. You know, we can't have spies in our government, right? This is what they were thinking. And he was like, wait, there's something up. He was really stressed about it. And so he made some allegations. This all happened in 1950. And I'm going to try to go into a progressive timeline, like 1950, 1951, and so on and so forth throughout the decade. So you'll hear me bounce around, but it's still what was happening in that specific year. Also in the 1950, the Xerox machine was made. Yes, we can make copies now. Isn't that cool? To think how long the copier machine has been around and how different it is. We can take pictures on our phones now and then have it sent to our email and then make copies. I mean, it's really interesting how things have evolved. In 1951, UNIVAC, the first business computer, came along. So people had a nice business computer to start using, which is really nice. The first transcontinental television transmission happened, and it was on September 4th of 1951, which is President Truman's opening speech was broadcasted from coast to coast. This was a super big deal. So we had some big things happen in 1951. And now in 1952, Dwight Eisenhower was elected president. Queen Elizabeth II became queen after her father died. Now we're moving on to 1953. In 1953, the DNA double helix was discovered. Basically, they realized that our DNA was made up of two chains of nucleotide that were paired together, and that is what encodes our genetic information. Basically, that's what makes me, me, and you, which is really cool. That was a really significant discovery. Also, moving on to the powder. Remember, I said that they used the most common powder that they used was pancake powder, and that's what it was called. I'm going to go ahead and take some Fenty setting powder on my Heavenly Luxe It Cosmetics brush. Kick that over there and just go ahead and set all this down. So in 1953, Joseph Stalin dies. If any of you guys Google him or do any research on him, he was a Soviet Union dictator, and he was a scary man. He was a really scary man, okay? He took his own citizens and he actually tortured millions of his own citizens. So during his reign, it was a no-go. Nobody really was like, hey, Soviet Union, whatever. But he passed away, so I'm sure pretty much they were relieved that all that bad stuff maybe was behind them. The Korean War, everything just like came to a close. It was like, hey, and it came to an armistice, July 27th of 1953, which means basically like all the bad things, like all the hostilities from either citizens or armed forces was just like, it's ceased. It's done. You're done. So that war ended, which is really good. In 1953, the Rosenbergs were executed. Now remember McCarthy, how I had mentioned him in the beginning? Like he was like, I got some spies up in this, the CIA, the Soviets and stuff like that. Like, yeah, these guys, like, they were American citizens, and they were giving top secret information of like our satellites and our nuclear positioning and nuclear weapons and our sonar and jet engine propulsion and all of that stuff. They were giving that over to the Soviets. So this guy was like, essentially, he was right. He was like, hey, these people are doing this, and yeah, get on that. So yeah, they were actually executed for their crimes. They were found guilty of their crimes of doing this, and they were executed during 1953. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the e.l.f. and Jen Atkin collab. This is really cute. It has some neutrals, a little bit of a warm neutral there, and then a little bit more cool over here. It's got a bronzer, a blusher, and a highlight. I thought this was a great palette to grab, to try. I haven't used it. I've swatched it, you can see, but I haven't actually used it. So again, I'm shopping my stash, so I wanted to give this a go. And so cheeks were kept apple of the cheeks, kind of, you swept it back a little bit, usually with corals or pinky shades. You know, we were venturing off from just having the red lips as well. I'm going to do some coral lips today. Women also put rouge or blush, you know, we all call it something different, on their eyelids as well. They use the blush to warm up their face some. Also in 1953, Hillary and Norgay reached the top of Mount Everest. Okay, hello. That freaking mountain is like 8,800 meters tall. It's a little bit more than that, give or take a little bit. But it's huge. Like, holy cow, right? They climbed that, and it's supposed to be like super cold up there. I'm smiling because the apples of my cheeks. Let me keep it on the apples of your cheeks. And again, it wasn't much difference in the actual products, but Max Factor had become pretty big because it was coming out with a lot of stuff. Tube mascara was becoming very popular. You know, the tube mascara like we use, which is great. In 1954, the McCarthy hearings ended. And so I guess maybe, you know, hey, the Rosenbergs were executed because of their crimes. So he's like, hey, I basically, you know, this is what happened. And then the U.S. Army versus Senator McCarthy ended the McCarthy era. Basically, that means you can't make accusations of treason or subversion. You can't do that anymore. So it's like they got some big rules and stuff now that were made. Then there was, okay, remember, back in those days, certain things were still really segregated. And that's very unfortunate. So there was a lot of racial things that were starting to come up in the 1950s more. There was Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. There was racial segregation in public schools, and it was deemed that it was unconstitutional, even if a segregated school were segregated, you know, they were separate, but they were considered, were made to be equal. So same teaching, same type of learning, and all of that stuff. That was really important, that everybody had the same amount of education. You know, now we want to make sure everything is really equal for everyone, and not just for different races, but for men and women. You know, it changes as well. So, you know, we are all human beings, and we should be given the same opportunities, and that's that simple. In July of 1954, Vietnam was divided, and because the French withdrew, it divided at the 7th parallel. And it wasn't going to be reunited until a new president was elected, like they could agree on a new president. So the polio vaccine was introduced. Great. Yay. That was a really big deal. The U.S. Nautilus was the first atomic submarine. Okay, I'm not big on heights, but I'm also not big on submarines. Like, under the water, do anything. No, that's just no. I'll pass. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and take this. I avoided the browns the last time, but I'm going to go ahead and take this kind of cooler toned brown. And I'm just going to take it on a little sponge. It's dirty looking, but it's just stained. And I'm going to go ahead and just run this across my lid. Really simple. They also did like a pale color and shimmers at night. Think gorgeous Marilyn Monroe, stunning Audrey Hepburn. Okay, now we're on the same page, right? There was another interesting thing that started to happen. You know how certain businesses offer you the time to be able to, well, not the time, but the ability to buy shares in their company, like Disney and things like that? Well, this is when the stock market actually offered that. It was like, hey, own your share of an American business. Let's do this, okay? And they decided to do it. And so we still do that now. I'm gonna go ahead and take a Morphe. This is from my gold collection, and I'm just gonna go ahead and just soften the edges just for me. Sometimes when you look down, you can really blend it out. The Warsaw Pact formed. That was a collective defense treaty that was established by the Soviet Union and 7 other of Soviet's satellite states, such as Bulgaria, Poland, and Romania, to name a few. The Sputnik satellite was launched. Hello, Sputnik satellite. You know, I don't even know how many satellites we have up there, to be very honest and truthful about all that. It's interesting. That was sent up by the Soviets. That was their satellite. There was another really big incident with race and segregation. It was Little Rock, Arkansas's integration. If you haven't heard of the Little Rock Nine, they were African-American students who had enrolled in Little Rock High School. And so it became a big old mess. Like, people didn't want them to go there. Again, this is just horrible. I can't imagine going back and thinking, like, just because of the skin color, they can't come to school. I don't really think that's fair. I think anybody should be able to go to school. So it's really just sad to stop and think about. But it brought us to being able to not being segregated like we are now, which is nice. You know, I like having friends that are all different colors. You know, in cultures also, it's really interesting to learn. Why can't we just learn from each other? Anyways, I'm a big advocate on like wanting us to learn from each other instead of just messing around with all this segregation and cultural like differences. I wish we could just all put it aside and just be friends, basically. They actually had to call in the National Guard. And at first, like, the person that was like running the state, I think it was like the governor, he was like, no, they can't go in either, yada, yada, yada. And it was like, but president was like, dude, National Guard is under like federal, like, that's it. I'm telling them what to do, not you. So they're going to stay there and they're going to protect these students. And soon these students, these Little Rock Nine, were allowed to attend, and actually the violence stopped for them to be able to attend high school. They just wanted to go to school, you know? I mean, it's like, hello, just let them go to school, you know? Makes me mad. Also, interesting thing, in 1957, this happened all in 1957, the New York Stock Exchange, 394, developed 394, which was forbidding its members from making transactions in a New York Stock Exchange off the exchange, like, as in, like, a side hustle, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, got this over here. Can you, like, you know, tell me some stuff and we'll just trade right now and we just don't gotta tell nobody. It's a hush-hush kind of situation. You'll make money and I'll make money and it'll be all good. No, it was like, nope, this is a big deal. You can't do this. This was in 1957. So we're like we're getting to the end of the decade here. So after I've done my eyes, you know, I kind of blended it out a little bit. I feel like I could have blended it out. I should blend it out a little bit more, like up here a little bit. I didn't really see anything about concealer until like later on, like in 1954. Max Factor came out with a concealer that was called Race, and you know, that's when concealer, it didn't talk about like it being really popular or anything like that. But that's what I could find about concealer. So I'm not really going to add concealer, so you're going to just have to deal with all this, you know. Just don't think it's really authentic to just throw it on right now. In 1958, the NASA Mercury Project happened. And so the Mercury projects were happening from 1958 to 1963. And this was the first human space flight in the United States. It was like an early highlight in the space flight. In 1959, Fidel Castro takes over Cuba. And this lasted from 1959 to 2008. And there was guerrilla warfare against Batista's forces. And after the guerrilla warfare won, Fidel Castro became prime minister of Cuba. And he wanted to turn it from a capitalist to a socialist but in the end he betrayed his country and became a communist, took all the freedoms from all his people, all his supporters. He was planting like Russian nuclear warheads in Cuban soil. He was planting Russian nuclear warheads in Cuban soil, and, you know, like on his own, like had nobody to tell him like, hey, you know, this isn't right. You really shouldn't do this. No, he actually did it on his, took at liberties that he wasn't supposed to. He was also very cruel. He was known to torture his own people that would support him before. He was known to like torture them. And he died in 2016 just from old age. At the end of 1950s, in the end of 1959, there were 2 more states added to the United States, and it was Alaska and Hawaii. So they decided to join in on us. And yeah, that is basically some seriously significant things that happened in the 1950s. In the 1950s, they were also starting to do that little flick, a little wing, just a little baby wing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this black. This is LA Girl Shockwave. And I'm going to lightly line my eyes. And instead of doing the flick, because I am used to doing the flick from using liquid liner, I'm not good at doing it with the regular liner. I'm just going to thicken the outside of my eyes, which offers that more doe-eyed effect. Curling your lashes was actually a big thing. Back then they did have eyelash curlers and they did use them. So we are going to curl our lashes, our up lashes, our top lashes. And I'm going to try the Mile High Club Wander Beauty. I discovered them in my drawer, of course, but the last in the 1940s, and that was their Trip for Two in their Wander Beauty Blush and Bronzer Duo. And I was like, wowie. And so when I happened to come across this, see, look, that's the blush. I mean, it just came off my finger very easily. When I came across this, this is Volume and Length Mascara. And go ahead and put on your mascara. Tube mascara was coming into its own. A different change in the brows was that they were trying to really stick with this like really heavily arched brow. And so yeah, I'm going to try to bring my brows into a big old arc. So now we have both of our brows arched, and yeah, do you know what? I don't dislike it. You know, it looks very pretty. Remember, your eyebrows are sisters, not twins. Unless they've been microbladed or tattooed, then they definitely need to be twins, because otherwise you should be really unhappy. But do you see, like, they have that nice arch? My eyes look really lifted. I have a very expressive face anyways, so when I cock an eyebrow, I really cock an eyebrow. So, I mean, this might be like a look for me to do. You know? I don't know. Anyways, I really like that. And next is, I'm going to go ahead and take the Kylie Jenner Kissmas Lip Liner. Again, I have it sharpened. And the colors of lips were like red, orange, coral, and pink. And they overdrew them too. So now that I have my lips lined, I have grabbed this Tarte, and it is called Daiquiri. And this is its color. It's very pretty, kind of a satin coral color. I've only used this once to try it. So we're going to go ahead and just put this on our lips and roll it down a little bit so I don't bust it. Try not to make a funny face when you're putting on lipstick, okay? Before you judge. All right, now that we have finished this look, it's like an orangey, corally kind of color. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of the look, and I'll be right back. Well, this is the final look, you guys. I kept it short, sweet, and simple when it came to the attire and look. I gave a soft off the shoulders or semi off the shoulders type top, and curled my hair, gave myself, pinned it back some. It was very simple. They wanted to keep things nice and clean and elegant. This was a very interesting stage and era in life for fashion, and very interesting and eventful in other ways. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to be part of my YouTube family, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And right next to that is the notification bell. If you tap that and personalize it, you can be notified every time I upload a video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. And don't forget, makeup can do a whole lot for the outside, but if you aren't beautiful on the inside, chances are it's going to make a difference. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.